Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to week 5 of season 5 of the Reddit League. We are in Idaho, our U.S. state and Canadian province week. My name is Zotomo, and I'm joined, as always, by Calamity. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's a bit hot today, but I'm looking at this cool mountain picture I've got here for Idaho, and I'm wishing I was there. Anyway, our guest this week is Orpheus. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine. It's a pleasure to be here for a second time.
Yeah, no, great to have you. Always looking forward to you being on the show, bringing your Division One knowledge and commentary to everything. Well, with that, yeah, let's just jump right in and see how exactly Division One did in Idaho. And as we look at these scores, very high, all except one. Orpheus, your fellow countryman Verdoc, not having the best of days, but I assume by that score it was just one round he couldn't quite get.
Yeah, I guess it was a time he forgot to guess, I think. But it's funny because it's the exact same situation as 2 weeks ago with the Volvo map with 4 draws and the only winner is Boxa. So it's a bit of luck that I don't think he needed. And it's not finished, but we will see it after. So other than that, well, there was one round which was a bit painful to pinpoint, and that's mainly this which decided of the bonus points. So yes, there's not a lot to say. I miss again the perfect score for nothing actually. So yeah.
Yeah, Calamity, lots of 9, 9, 7s, and 8s here. Quite a missing. You dropped a little bit more probably on that same round, I guess, that difficult to
No,
pinpoint. Oh,
no, that round wasn't too difficult for me. We actually commentated your game, Orpheus, and to me it seemed quite clear that you
yeah.
were a bit too far off to the east, but I guess you'll see it back. Maybe a bit too quick there, but yeah, for me, no, it was a different round. Just one of the smaller town. Well, probably one of the bigger towns of Idaho, but not really a big city, where I just did not find anything until like with 30 seconds to go, and then I was just a bit lost and looking for the wrong street. Well, not necessarily the wrong street. I was just looking for a very small street that wouldn't stand out until you zoomed right into it, and should have probably been looking for a different one. But either way, I was actually quite happy with my score, and then in the end, I saw, oh, well, I'll take my point. Not too disappointed with that. And yeah, for Verdoc, it was timeouts. Always a bit difficult with those to say, well, was he like very close to the right place and would have gotten like 4-9 something? Or did he have no idea where we really were anyway and probably didn't matter? We don't know. Could have been. But yeah, as Orpheus said, Boxer just, I don't know, he should just try getting like 5,000 points on some game and see if he still wins. Maybe he's got like some secret powers that he doesn't know of. But yeah, either way, I think with that, he's in a pretty secure position. I think other people, generally the 24,998 gave you the bonus point here. So Basement, I'm sure, also going to be pretty happy with 2 points for this week. Yeah, apart from that, nothing too surprising. Maybe that Raidman actually didn't get a perfect score is a little bit surprising. Not even a bonus point for the otherwise so strong pinpointer.
Yeah, and as we take a look at the table, we'll notice that lack of an extra point is what's going to cause him to be bumped down on the table. Mr. Blue takes his spot in second, so it's been a long time since we've seen either Boxa or Raidman in the top 2 in Division 1. Orpheus, you, Calamity, and Nimrif, all of you guys don't move in the middle of the table there, and yeah, with Verdoc timing out and around, drops him down to last place in the table. Yeah, Orpheus, you finished in the top 4 last season, and it looks like you're on track, at least for now, to do the same here.
Yeah, I'm quite happy for the moment with my season, as I don't train compared to the previous season, except for this week because I'm here, so I had to know a bit about Idaho. But yeah, I'm really wondering who will win this division. I think it's clear now that Boxa will win, I think. But everything is still very close. Like there are 3 players at the bottom with 5 points, and then just 1 point of difference above. So for the relegation, I don't know how it will end, but for the moment, it's quite hard for my fellow compatriots. And for the players also, you, Calamity, and Nimrith are very close. So of course, I hope that the actual top 4 will still be the same, but everything can happen. And I think next week will be very interesting for that.
Mhm. Yeah, Calamity, it's kind of tough to say. Do you think you're on the upper half of the table, like still a chance to make those playoffs? Or are you one of those, you're going to lump yourself in with the lower half, just trying to still fight for survival, only 3 points off of those relegation spots?
I'm gonna say both. It really just
I was
depends on
trying to
how the
make you
next
pick
weeks
one,
go.
but
I would personally, I think I'm more likely to just end up in the middle of both and have nothing to do with either. Basically, the next 4 weeks are gonna be Russia, Canada, and then in the middle of those are a hard world and Europe. And for both of those maps, you can't really practice much. I mean, I suppose in a hard world, at least you can get better at some of the more difficult countries like Indonesia, maybe. And for Europe, you can, I don't know, practice some of the more difficult countries as well. Maybe Greece, Bulgaria, I don't know. But at the end of the day, it's still like you're relying on which of the 5 rounds you get, and those could be super easy, those could be super hard, and it's a lot more difficult to predict than, you know, a Russia or a Canada, even though those aren't really the most easy countries to predict either. But I do think I don't have the consistency to be sure that I can, you know, get a great result on all of those maps, and I think I would need that if I really wanted to get into the top 4. But at the same time, I still think I can probably get at least a decent result on 2, if not 3 of these. So I also think I shouldn't have to worry too much about relegation. I hope, at least. But yeah, I think Boxer already pretty much secure in the playoffs. I don't think there's anything that can happen there to push him out of it. I mean, he's 10 points ahead of me in 5th, so well, we've got 4 more games to go, so that's not going to happen. And then behind that, I think Mr. Blue is probably also pretty safe. And then, if anything, would be Raven or Orpheus to drop out. If anyone from behind really does pull out an amazing finish to the season. But I do think, like, talking about what's most likely, I think we're probably going to see the top 4 stay the same, and then the relegation fights as well. I think anything can really happen here. I do think maybe Nimrith is a bit too strong of a player to really drop down there, but we don't know. I don't know, maybe he just has some bad weeks. I haven't looked at what his opponents are coming up as well. So maybe if he's just got an insane finish in terms of, like, maybe still has to play Boxer, Mr. Blue, Raymond, Orpheus, I don't know. Well, he has to play me still, so that's not going to happen. But you know what I mean.
Yeah, it might be worth noting that if we look at those total scores, Nimrith is kind of a good dividing line. Everybody else above that 1,223,000 something, but then Mr. Baseman, they're under that 120,000. So there's quite a dividing line in that, so to speak. We'll shift over then to our fixtures for next week, and it is Russia. Joy. We have a rematch of the last 2 season finals in Raidman and Boxa, so it might be a preview again of this season's final as well. But I think our most interesting matchup is you and Orpheus, Calamity, up against each other. I think this might be the first time that we've had our guest face off against one of us on that week that they were here. So Orpheus, your take on these, and do you think you can take Calamity in Russia?
Yes. So as I said, the week can already be decisive with Calamity against me and Nimrith against Mr. Blue, because if we both win, there could already be a gap of like 4 or 5 points between the 4th and the 5th. But I don't know for our match. It's Russia, so it's hard to predict. It will depend on the rounds and what we do. So it's quite hard. And it's the 2 other interesting matches are between Pluki and Baseman and Warlock and Bulgur against Bulgur, because it's important for them for the relegation spots, and maybe the winners would be able to still fight for the playoffs. And finally, what would be in theory the most interesting possible match in the competition. It's Rainman against Boxer, but yeah, as Raidman announced, he will not play, so it's again a bit of luck for Boxer. But the only suspense is will he manage to get a perfect score in Russia? So good luck for that.
Yeah, Calamity, Orpheus kind of pointed it out. It is kind of a top of the table versus each other, while the bottom of the table fight it out separate.
Yeah, especially the bottom four, Basement, Pluki, Bulgur, and Verdok playing against each other is very interesting, a very decisive week, and also big opportunity for the likes of me and Nimrif to sort of create a bit of a gap there to the players in the relegation zone if we can, pull out some points out of this week. I was considering back last week when, around the time I was playing Idaho, whether I would just, sack off Russia entirely and not practice much. Because I thought like my chances of winning against Orpheus were pretty small anyway. But I did then decide to, no, I'm going to practice. I'm going to put in a few games. I'm going to learn some of the stuff that you can learn to get a bit better at it. And, we'll see if it pays off in the end. But I do think, especially, already knowing that Raidman has decided to not play Russia, that the chances of getting a bonus point for just finishing in the top 50% are a little bit higher. So I thought that might be, enough to make it worth it. And you never know what the seed brings. And yeah, Nimrith and Mr. Blue, as Orpheus said as well, is very important. They're currently 6 points apart, but that gap could shrink a lot, or it could widen a lot, depending on how that matchup goes. And I think, as Orpheus said, if he and Mr. Blue win those games, then it's almost decided for the top 4, unless we see some real drop-offs in the last 3 weeks. But that seems unlikely. But if the opposite happens, if me and Nimrith win, for example, then it suddenly gets really interesting again. Maybe if you've got two people, probably considering it's Russia, and we probably won't be seeing too many draws, winning their games out of the bottom 4, so they'll also come up the table and fight for those playoffs. So that could lead to a very interesting end of the season.
Indeed. Well, let's shift over then to Division 2 and their results in Idaho. And all I have to say about this one is Americans a little bit disappointing in this. Apparently, most of these Americans, at least, are not familiar with the great state of Idaho in their home country. Real Clyde, the only one putting up a decent score of this. And unfortunately for him, he goes up against Snorlax, who had a perfect game. Latemp's the only countryman for you, Orpheus, also struggling a bit, but with lots of 19,000 something. Maybe there was one difficult round in this one.
Yeah, I think it was the hardest seed, mainly because of one very rural round. That could be easy if you had learned the counties, as we were at a border between 2 of them, and there were signs to indicate them. But otherwise, I don't know if it was easily doable. So that's why the scores are way lower than in the other divisions. And only Snorlax managed to find it. So it's a very important win for him. And yeah, the Real Clyde didn't demerit, but yeah, it's a bad luck for him. And yes, solid performances from Renata and also Shumi, even if it was a free win for him.
Yeah, Calamity. Yeah, Ordbuck also putting up a pretty good score against LCN. I think he might have gone into that week with that score thinking he wasn't going to come out of that. A lot of the Europeans in that kind of position, but they end up over top of their American counterparts. Max also being a close win.
Yeah, I did mention last week that even if the positions in the table didn't indicate it, that I did think that Orboka might have a pretty good chance against LCN. And yeah, it happened. LCN struggling a bit. Quite a lot of, scores in the just below the 20,000 points mark, or just above in the case of Barry and Max. It was pretty much for almost all of them round 3 that they struggled with a lot, which was, as Orpheus said, around really in the middle of nowhere, which you could at least get the right area if you've practiced enough, but finding the exact streets, pretty difficult. It was possible you had street names there and the area isn't like overfilled with streets. So if you are confident that you know which area you're in, you could probably pinpoint it or find it at least without too many troubles. But of course, you needed to practice a lot for that. And it seems like, well, I guess you also need to get a bit lucky in practice, because if you play like 100 games and you just never have a round in that area, then what can you do? But overall, yeah, pretty close games in some of them. No draws though. Zotomo and Guelo just a bit too far away from their opponents. But yeah, as you said, a bit disappointing surely for the Americans, considering they essentially got a state in their home country and none of them picked up a win. Still, like a bonus point for Clyde is at least something against Snorlax. And let me just quickly look up. I'm not entirely sure. Wait, let me scroll down. Oh, yeah, that was stupid of me. I was trying to figure out if Barry got a bonus point, but he won his game, so as the only American, so obviously he didn't need a bonus point. Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's take a look at that table. And with those results, quite a bit of shuffling. LCN falls down, and Real Clyde, despite his good score, only getting bonus point means he drops again. Probably Renata starts her climb back up the table after missing out last week with a yellow card. But yeah, other than that, not a whole lot. I mean, everybody kind of moved around, but kind of stayed in their own zones, so to speak. Orpheus.
Yeah, this division is quite hard to predict, I think, compared to last season when some players were clearly favorites. But this season, the level is quite homogeneous. So I don't know. I don't know how it will end, but I guess it's pretty logical to see Snorlax, Barry, and Max at the top. And there is already a gap after the 7th place. So we can see that, for example, Ice Taru is struggling a bit after his relegation from Division 1 last season.
Definitely. Yeah, Calamity, probably a kind of some surprise. I mean, Shumi always, of course, up there, but he's had a couple good weeks when he really needed to have them, and that sees him up into 6th place here.
Yeah, I'm not really too surprised by anything going on here. I think the top 6 still all have chances for promotion, looking at it realistically. But of course, Snorlax with now a 2-point gap in a pretty good position. But we do have this being one of the bigger divisions, so we're not at the halfway point yet. So there's still a lot that can happen. You'd also need to take into account who's already got their game against the red-carded player. So there's a couple of things that rely on that. But other than that, yeah, I think it's pretty open. You do see, of course, as was said, the little gap there in between 7th and 8th, already a 3-point gap. And then Ice a bit at the bottom with only 3 points. And I feel like you see a big problem here where if you do not get bonus points at any point, then you're going to be struggling a lot, because you're essentially just relying on, winning games or drawing if you can manage to do so. But without bonus points, you're quickly losing contact to the people ahead of you if you don't, win your games. And that's what you see here with Ice, who's already 3 points behind, even if his win-draw-loss ratio doesn't look much worse than, the people above him. And you can kind of see the same with Boca as well, I suppose, who also hasn't picked up a single bonus point. LCN as well, where you can kind of compare their win-draw-loss ratios, and you'd look at them and you'd think, well, not too different from the people above them. But the bonus points, that's really where it's at in those kind of situations.
Yeah, bonus points very vital in close competitions here. As we take a look at their matchups in Russia, Snorlax will be very happy to have his bye week in Russia. He can relax and just focus on maybe getting another perfect game, keeping his record strong, getting those aces up. And we do get our first American Derby in this division with so many of them. It take us to week 5 to get that, Orpheus.
Yeah, for Isaru, it could already be important to win against Boca, who is just above the relegation spots. And I think the most interesting match is Renata against Max, because they are both fighting for the promotion spots. So it will be quite interesting. But also for Le Temps against the Real Clyde, because Le Temps is struggling at the bottom. So it could be important for him to win this match.
Yeah, and Calamity LCN versus Shumi there. LCN kind of falling a bit in the table of the last couple of weeks, and he'll need to turn things around if he wants to stop that trend.
Yeah, and I think that'll be a very tough challenge for him, because Shumi especially is always very, very solid in some of the more difficult maps, where LCN wouldn't really need to practice quite a bit and put up a good game to be able to, get anything out of that game. I also think it's a bit of a shame that Snorlax gets his red carded matchup in this week, because I really would have liked to see what he can do in Russia if he'd actually practiced it and done well. Apart from that, of course, yeah, you mentioned the American Derby, Guelo against Barry. That should be Barry being a clear favorite here, but we are getting to the point of the season where Guelo needs to pick up more points to really keep his position in the table somewhat decent. So Russia might be a very good point to start, to just maybe try to get a lot of practice in, because I feel like this, more so than most other maps this season, is a map where you can not necessarily guarantee a win or more points, but you can make the chances much higher than with any other map. Where, if compared to someone who hasn't practiced, you're probably going to be in a much better place. And then, yeah, of course, top match Renata against Max is going to be very interesting. Renata hasn't lost a game yet, if we ignore the yellow card, and neither is Max. So either we'll see a draw, which could be very interesting in Russia, or one of them is going to lose their actual first match this season.
Nice. Well, then let's take a look at the results in Division 3. And we got 3 zeros on this one. 2 red cards, and Freckles chose this week to not play in this one. So Pauline, you'll be a bit happy with that, even though he put up some very good scores. But probably the talking point here is the draw for Armand at the top for your fellow Frenchman. And yeah, Pashtek with that red card probably didn't do his best with only 15,000.
Yeah, it's quite unfortunate for Freckles to have missed this week, and I hope he will not regret it at the end of the season. And yeah, a nice score for Pastek. I don't think he was very concerned about this week, but yes, it's always a win. And a nice win for Seppo in the German Derby. He was struggling a bit in the previous weeks, so it's nice for him. And the two other matches end up with a draw, and the 4 players got a bonus point, so it's nice for them.
Right, yeah, a real nice win there for Seppo, trying to survive at the bottom of the table there against Closed, who was in the top 4 before this week. Calamity.
Yeah, definitely. And you can see they're Closed essentially with the lowest score out of anyone who had to play that match seriously, which I suppose is a bit disappointing for him. Because he would have definitely needed those points, not necessarily for the current position in the table, but in a game against the current last place. When you're fighting for promotion, it's not really what you want to see happen. And yeah, apart from that, great game from Hugo, great game from Armand, of course, just 2 points off. Think probably just a pinpointing error. WTF with another good game as well. He's been pretty impressive this season so far. And yeah, other than that, you mentioned it, 2 red cards, 1 yellow cards. A lot of the matches weren't really that important. And yeah.
Well, then let's look at the table, and the 2 Frenchmen doing quite well, at least 2 of the Frenchmen doing quite well, Armand and Bubat at the top of the table. W2F, as Calamity mentioned, is having a pretty good season. He sits up there in 3rd. Closed with his unfortunate drop against Seppo does drop down, and I think Seppo will be really frustrated, as well as Pashtek, that despite their nice win and easy week, they don't move up out of the table at all. Orpheus.
Yeah, it's nice to see the two French newcomers at the top, and it's funny because they are in the same team in the French community, so they should be happy. And yeah, for Pastek, he said at the beginning of the season that he was going to train, but I don't think he actually does. So we will see if he will change his habits for the next weeks. And in mid-table, it's very close, and it's hard to predict who will come out on top. And for example, will Freckles be able to finally quit this division after 5 seasons?
Yeah, I think now that I think about it, Clement, I think Freckles has had one yellow card every season. He's
I had the same thought, so I looked it up. He didn't have it in every season, but I think he's had. It's his 3rd season where he's picked up a yellow card.
Yeah, he always seems to pick up at least one. I mean, only one of them, thank goodness. He never gets 2.
Yeah.
But yeah, he always has a week where he kind of drops out on this one. Yeah, one thing I wanted to point out to you is that, yeah, with him and WTF, their total score is really kind of a standout when you look kind of where they are in the table. Everybody else around them over 120,000, but they're not even to 100,000 yet.
Well, the one for WTF is just wrong. I think I've said the exact same words last week as well.
Still, but yeah, I tried to fix it and it just doesn't. Okay.
Nope. You also gave Blockchain a point there, which is funny for a red carded player. That has something to do with it, I suppose. But Steal the Sneak is also missing one, so just the whole table is screwed.
If the positions are right, play their games, everything is fine.
But yeah, Freckles, of course, lower because of the yellow cards. But yeah, I don't think anything too weird is going on with the total scores here in the whole table. Yeah, you can clearly see a bit of a difference if you look back at Pastek and Seppo compared to everyone else in the division. Of course, you got to take out Hugo and Freckles for their respective yellow cards. So they're clearly quite a bit behind everyone else. And yeah, they're probably already in a position where they're either going to need to step up a lot. And I mean, Seppo's had a good start this week with the win against Closed, but he's going to need a couple more of these weeks if he wants to get out of those relegation playoff places. But the one positive thing is that, they are only relegation playoff places. So if they just, keep being down there, eventually they will get another game to stay up in the division right at the end. Yeah, I think in the midfield, it's still very, very close. You do see Armand with how well he's performed so far. I think he's pretty much a shoe-in for, at least one of the 2 automatic promotion spots. And then I think it can be pretty close from basically like 2nd down to even 8th. Even Hugo is still in with a good shot. A bit unfortunate that he had that yellow card. Otherwise, he may have been right in there in the sort of maybe promotion playoff spots as well.
Yeah, well, let's take a look at their fixtures coming up in Russia. And it is Armand at the top of the table and Hugo who will benefit from the red card matchups in Russia. So they will be relieved about that. I think Hugo especially have that red-yellow card. He can kind of relax and not have to worry about things too much. Other than that, Orpheus, we got the Bubat and Pashtek as a French derby here.
Yeah, it's very important for Pastek because if he wins, he can still hope to not be relegated. So he has to win, and even if Bubat is the logical favorite, it's Russia, so anything can actually happen. And it's a bit the same for Seppo against WTF. They are both in the opposite sides of the rankings. But the 2 other matches are also important in mid-table with Freckles against Closed and Steal the Sneaks against Paulinho. So yeah, it's an important week.
Yeah, Clement, can Seppo take another head in WTF this week in Russia, or is it going to be much bigger of a challenge given the map?
I think it definitely is going to be much bigger of a challenge, but I personally, actually, WTF is one of those people where I'm not really sure how much practice he puts in. Seppo, I don't think practices too much, or at least he didn't until last week. I don't know if he needed any practice for that Idaho map in Division 3. I don't quite remember what kind of locations it had, but maybe that gives him a bit of a boost. Maybe he then decides, all right, maybe I do have a little bit of a chance after all. Maybe I should practice Russia. And if he does, then he could have a good chance of maybe pulling out some points. You know, you never know as well how seriously Amon and Hugo are going to take their red card games. And if they don't take them seriously, then chances of a bonus point are just going to go up for, you know, everyone else. And yeah, I think all of the other matches as well, pretty interesting. Close against Treckles, of course. Steal the Snick against Paulinho as well. For Steal the Snick and Paulinho, this is already a pretty interesting match in terms of if you win this one, you're right back in with the promotion fight. And if you lose it, you're kind of in a middle of nowhere position in the table where you don't necessarily have too much to worry about from behind, but you're also already pretty far behind the promotion spots. You do still have a lot of weeks to go in Division 3, but I don't think that's really the place you want to be there, not only for the position on the table, but also for your personal motivation.
Indeed. Well, getting on to Division 4 and 5, our split divisions, we will take a look at their results in Idaho. So Division 4A, and lots of good scores. It is worth mentioning here that this might have had one of the easiest rounds I've ever had in Geoguessr in this one. And I don't think it had to do anything with Idaho, just a really beautiful location in this one. So lots of scores right there at the top. And yeah, Orpheus, the Frenchman, putting up decent scores, but not really enough for a win in this one. And Dromi actually should have a yellow card there. I forgot to change his color.
Yeah, Exalt missed the perfect score. I know he was a bit disappointed. He said to me that he played too fast and guessed too fast. So fortunately, it's not too bad for him as he got the bonus points, but he should have get a perfect score, I think. And a nice perfect score for Waykodok. It's his first win, I guess, and first points of the season. So it's very important for him against Mick Piet here. Also a good win for Soviet Spy against Pashtetli, and yeah, and Flipster continue to his very good start of the season against Solar Sensei, which missed also the perfect score.
Yeah, Clem, when we talk about Wakelock in Formula G, and he always has that 1 or 2 weeks where he shows up and proves that he is kind of worthy of a place in these kind of, you know, not the lowest division at least. And this was the week he did it.
Yeah, apparently. Always that, just that 1 week in there. But yeah, as Orpheus said, Hexalt, I can understand how he must be super disappointed because he had like an insane performance on the Division 1 seed where he 25k'd that like 2.5 minutes quicker than anyone else. So he must have practiced quite a lot for this. To then fall short, he was a bit too far away in 2 rounds, which on top of that, both weren't super hard to pinpoint or anything. So just going too fast there. And he finished the seed in 7 minutes, which again is way faster than anyone else. But if you lose 4 points, it really doesn't matter anymore how fast you were. And he does still pick up. Does he still pick up a bonus point? I think he just gets in there. Let me just check. Yes, just got in there as the 5th best score. So at least that much was possible for him. But yeah, Dromi, unfortunately, picking up a yellow card gives Lunacy a free victory, which he'll take considering his score wasn't that impressive. I mean, outside of the top 5 and with the 7th best score there. And he can definitely use the points for the promotion fight. And yeah, Flipster as well with a perfect score, doing very well. Just beating out Solar Sensei there. I guess beating out, they drew, but you know what I mean. And yeah, Soviet with a good game as well. Pashtetli, unfortunately, not quite being able to keep up with some of the performances he's had at the start of the season.
Yeah, well, we look at this table. Despite these results, not a whole lot changes. The top 4 do all stay the same. The two Americans giving themselves a good chance to keep up in there. And we really see a divide start to happen there after that top four with like a 5-point gap. But then after that, everybody really close. And Wakelock didn't move out of that relegation spot, but he did keep himself in contention, Orpheus.
Yeah, this gap is already important, and I think it's pretty logical to see Exalt, Lunacy Echo, and Solar Sensei at the top of the rankings. Flipster is quite new, I think, in the community, so it's nice to see him also at the first position. But Sepcursed, even if there is this gap, is actually very close in terms of total score. So maybe he was a bit unlucky in this season for the moment. But yeah, with only 4 weeks left, it could already be difficult for all the players after Lunacy to still finish in the promotion spots. And in the opposite side, it's all very close, and we will see if Wakelock can keep winning to move up the rankings.
Yeah, Calamity.
Yeah, exactly. I think the gap is too big to really make anything happen there anymore for, you know, 5th and downwards to fight for the promotion spots. Only 4 games to go to make up 5 points to not only 1, but you need to overtake 2 of them to make your way into the promotion playoffs. I just don't think it's going to happen unless, as always, if you get like 4 perfect scores to finish the season, maybe. But even then, actually, I think it's not even guaranteed. So we're looking at a very difficult path to the promotion there for these players who are 5th and below. They're probably going to have to focus on keeping in the division and not dropping too many points going forward. And as Orpheus pointed out, Sepcursed's total score actually puts him more into the group of the players above than the group below. So he's had a bit of bad luck, potentially. Maybe his lower aces, no perfect games so far, means he's, lost out on a couple of bonus points. This week as well, we saw he 5 points short of a bonus point for just not finishing in the top 50%. And yeah, it's actually a very interesting division, I guess, because while you have that massive gap in the middle, the top group and the bottom group are all very, very close to each other. So everything can still happen in those last 4 weeks.
Definitely. We'll see how they can start things off in the back stretch in Russia. And yeah, we've got a very important bottom of the table matchup in Pushtetli and Wakelock. Besides that, though, it's a lot of mixed fighting. A lot of the top players who are kind of separated away from the rest of the pack, taking on some people in the lower end, including the French Derby, Hexalt and Dromi. Orpheus.
Yeah, the fact that the 4 first players didn't fight, I guess. I mean, there's no match between the 4 first players, so it's interesting because if they all win, the gap will be too important, and it will be over, I think, for the other players. So for the derby, we will see if Dromi will play this time. But I think, I can't say too much things because I know that I know the level of exalts in Russia. So yeah, but we will see if how Dromi will play this seed, and yeah, in the matches. It's complicated. We will see if Soviet Spy will have an advantage with his username, but I don't know. And yeah, so this week can already be very decisive in all the positions.
Yeah, I mean, it is Russia, Calamity. So maybe this is the week that some of these people in the lower table could kind of get a leg up on their competitors by taking out one of the top 4.
Yeah, definitely. If there's any week where you can just persevere through practice and really increase your chances, then it's certainly this one. So we'll see if any of them make use of that. But at the end of the day, you still need to get it together on the actual seed. And that might be one thing which might be a bit more difficult for the people lower down. But yeah, we'll see. I think most of the top players are also still going to practice, but maybe one of them thinks, hey, I'm playing against one of the bottom players. Maybe I don't need to practice that much and get surprised in the end. But yeah, I think generally, definitely, as was said, Pastetli Wakelok, the most important match, well, maybe not the most important, but the closest at least, in terms of where they are in the table. And for both of them, incredibly important, of course, because Wakelok going in this with good form, just coming off of a perfect score, and Pastetli coming off of a pretty poor score in Idaho. So we'll see if Pastetli can turn his luck around, and if Wakelok can keep up with what he's been doing last week.
Well, to the other side of Division 4 in Division 4B, and we've got a big scattering of results. 3 perfect scores. 2 of them shouldn't be too surprising to you after how the season's been going, Carp and Diesel. But yeah, given how easy I think the seed was, I managed to get a perfect game because, well, just home field advantage, I guess, is all I can really say about that. And it wasn't the biggest challenge for me. But at the other end, Trebiha, Labangreb, and Hidekmi not having the best of weeks. And here, Orpheus.
Yeah, so first, well done, Zotomo. It was important for you as you were struggling a bit since the beginning of the season. So it's nice to get a perfect score. And yeah, hard week for Hidekmi after another hard week in Australia. I know he was not very happy with the combo Australia, Idaho, Russia. So yes, he struggles a bit. And a nice win for Nakiro, who didn't have his best performance in Idaho, but it was sufficient for him to beat Trebliha. So it's nice. And finally, yeah, Carp and Diesel continue to dominate the division. So it's also nice wins for them.
That's 4 perfect games out of 5, Calamity. And I think Pork Steaks, yeah, definitely not happy that he goes up against Carp in the American Derby here in Idaho. His score pretty good. Would have beaten almost everybody else in the division.
Well, I don't know about almost everyone else. Yeah, he was 5th and with the 5th best score. But that at least leads him to pick up a bonus point for that, unlike Jake, who I feel like is probably going to be even more disappointed because he doesn't even pick up a bonus point for his score. Yeah, apart from that, Carp and Diesel, at this point, you're kind of expecting that, and I'm really looking forward to see what they're going to be doing in Russia. Other than that, yeah, Hidekmi, he's hit a bit of a run of very bad form, unfortunately. He looked pretty good starting out in the season, but with those last few weeks, he's kind of dropped off a bit. And yeah, apart from that, I don't think anything too surprising. Of course, your perfect score is surprising, but a win itself wouldn't have been very surprising against Laban's score there.
Yeah. No, I played the seed and I was like, oh God, this wasn't that bad. There was one round that was like a ski resort and you're like, okay, well, maybe that would throw a few people and that might be why we see some scores down below closer to the 20,000 mark. But other than that, I was like, oh God, I mean, I could definitely was fearing that Labangreb would be like within draw range and I would still not get a win. But thankfully it did come out for that. So if we take a look at that, what that means for the table, of course, Diesel and Carp don't move. They stay at the top there's 4 perfect games apiece. Yemeni does move into that 3rd spot over Nakiro. And I keep things very tight towards the bottom of the table. And Orpheus, we see the exact same thing in 4B as we see in 4A. The top 4 pretty much separate from everybody else. The one big thing we have is that, yeah, the top 2 even further away from 3 and 4.
Yeah, totally. I think, yes, Diesel and Carp, one of them will be directly promoted. It's almost certain, I think, and the other ones will be in the playoffs. But behind them, yes, Yamine and Nakiro are certainly favorites here. So it will be a nice fight between them to have the 3rd spot. But maybe Jake or Hidekmi can still be able to, if they finish very well the season, they can be able to catch them. Maybe it will be hard, but they can do it. And at the bottom, it's like Group A, nothing is done. So everyone will have to fight to stay in the division.
Yeah, Calamity.
Yeah, I think out of the sort of the midfield, Jake, based on skill, could still fight for those promotion spots, but he's just made way too many mistakes so far this season to really be in there. And being 4 points behind is not impossible to make up by any means, but he needs to, keep a consistent game up for once and keep, pull 5 good rounds together to win his games. And apart from that, yeah, as Orpheus said, Diesel Carp is going to be a very interesting fight for direct promotion playoff spot. And whoever doesn't end up there is going to make it very difficult for all of the other guys in the playoff, promotion playoffs. But yeah, so fighting for that third place, of course, we're looking at Heyimine and Nakiro most likely. But as I said, Jake maybe with a bit of a chance. And then, yeah, at the bottom, everything's still very close together. Tripoli a bit behind with 2 points, but that's still a gap you can totally make up. Just, we've had 5 weeks already, so if you've only picked up 3 points now, of course, at the bottom, it gets more difficult to make up points than it would be, for example, at the top.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's look at Russia. And yeah, we've got that matchup. This will probably decide the automatic promotion playoff spot, Diesel versus Carp. Neither of them have a loss yet. Given how hard it will be to draw in Russia, because most draws happen at that 25 top of the score range, and Russia doesn't usually give those up very easily. We could definitely see a loss here for one of them. Other than that, probably, yeah, for the Frenchman Hideki, his run of form has a good chance at maybe stopping that by practicing Russia and taking on bottom of the table at Treblinka, Orpheus.
Yeah, this group is the complete mirror of the other group, because in Group A, the 2 last players will face each other, and here it's the 2 first players. And then it's the same. The 4 next players are only against the 4 players against them. So there is no match between players fighting for the same spots, except the 2 first, obviously. So the match between Carp and Diesel, yes, will be very interesting, but I don't think it will be crucial for the direct promotion. There is only 1 point between them, so maybe the winner will be totally sure to be at least in the playoffs, but the loser will still be able to win the division, I guess. And Yamine and Nakiro have to win to stay in the fight for the playoffs, I guess. And the same for Hideki and Jake, because if they lose, and if Yamine and Nakiro win, it will be over for them, I guess. So as for Group A, this week is already crucial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess besides that top of the division matchup, Calamity, any of these that you're looking forward to?
I think Pork Steaks against Heyimine is a very interesting game, because Pork Steaks always feels a bit like a wild card, and you never really quite know what you're going to get. And for Heyimine, this is kind of a must-win game, or at least, must get a couple of points game to keep up his fight for the promotion playoff spots. Nakiro should be favored against Laban. I think Laban's been relatively consistently just slightly below average in the division. So for Nakiro as well in the promotion fight, almost like a must-win game. Yeah, Zotomo, your game against Jake, I don't know. You probably
He's
don't
made
have
some
the time.
mistakes. Hopefully he makes some more
Yeah.
here.
It just, you need to be in a range where it matters if he makes mistakes or not. Yeah. That's going to be the interesting part in there. And yeah, Hideki definitely needs to stop his run of bad form, and that's probably the week to do it.
Right. Well, let's look at Division 5 then, our final division, and their results in Idaho. And kind of maybe no surprise that the American Derby produces a draw, both of them doing quite well in this one. And yeah, Artificial, another American, also pulling out a win. Probably a little bit of a disappointing score for Vincenzo there, Orpheus.
Yeah, Vincenzo is struggling a bit since the start of the season. And yes, it was a difficult week for him also. There are important wins for Penguin and Yamabi to escape the direct relegation, and maybe a bad week for Oli, which was for me one of the favorites. So he lost some points for the promotion here, and finally a good perfect score for Clemens. It's which is important for him, I guess.
Yeah, Calamity, a perfect game from your countryman Clemens and teammate in Formula G. And we cast a match with Soundbite, and we said that he really had improved, and he did. Just very unfortunate to have to go up against that perfect score.
Yeah, that's a bit unfortunate for him. He mentioned it as well, how he finally got a really great game, and then all of his opponents down there in the relegation fight also did, with Penguin winning, Yamabi winning, Soundbites against him, just getting a very good score as well and picking up 2 points for that. So maybe not necessarily the best situation, but also it allows for him to actually potentially, change his sights and maybe look towards the promotion fight, even with some of the players up there really dropping a lot of points, like Ollie or Sevlin. Yeah, Bombadil, I guess, is a bit unfortunate there, especially if you look at he's just 3 points short of a bonus point there, so his luck doesn't seem to be increasing by anything. Yeah, other than that, Xander Artificial getting pretty much just the job done. Of course, Artificial with Vincenzo, who's really not been having a good season, having the bit of the easier opponent there on his side.
Yeah, so as we take a look at this table, with those results, the stars align. Nobody moves, but things get a lot closer. We can see Artificial in first place on 13, but only 3 points away is Soundbite in fifth. Yamabi. I don't know why I tripped over that. In sixth, on 9 points as well. So the table got a lot closer, even with nobody moving. Orpheus.
Yeah, it seems to be difficult for Bombadil and Vincenzo. The gap between them and Clemens is withering, and everything is very close. So it's hard to say. Artificial and Xander seem to be the most consistent players, so they should fight for the promotion. And I guess Oli should also fight for this, but it's hard to predict.
Yeah, Calamity.
Yeah, this is a really interesting one just because of how insanely close everything is, really, from first to eighth. Anything could still happen. The only thing you kind of see there is that no one's really been super consistent so far. If anything, Xander and Artificial have been pulling out the good games and not dropping too many points. But other than that, everyone's had some bad weeks. So even for the players who are a bit further down, if they can just avoid those bad weeks in the coming 4 weeks, then they might still have a chance to make it into the promotion playoff spots. And even for Bombadil down there, I think it's still possible if he can get a run of good form to make it out of there, even if it currently doesn't look too good.
Yeah, I mean, his total score isn't that bad. He's still definitely in the hunt when you compare him at least to Vincenzo. So a chance for him. And they will have to tackle Russia next. And yeah, a really interesting set of matchups here. I think one that really stand out to matter is Sethlin and Soundbite in the middle towards that bottom of those people in the hunt for the playoff promotion spots face off against each other. Xander and Artificial towards the top do take on people a bit further down the table, Orpheus.
Yeah, in theory, Oli, Xander, and Artificial should be favorites, but it's Russia, so it's hard to tell. All those matches are hard to predict because it will depend a lot on the level of each of them in Russia, like if they can read Cyrillic, for example. So in any case, for Oli, Xander, and Artificial, it will be important for them to win to get ahead of their competitors. And settling against 59 Soundbite, it's as you said, interesting because they have both 10 points, so it can help them to win for the promotion. And finally, for Yamabi and Penguin, it's important also because the players are close in the rankings, so they can move up by winning.
Oh, very nice. Well, let's take. Oh, sorry, Calamity. Forgot about you.
Just ignoring me.
Yeah. Any thoughts on this? Your fellow teammate there and countryman. Does he stand a chance against Xander in Russia?
It's really going to be tough. I don't think he has a good chance. Unless he practices a lot. Xander's a very good player, and Clayman's had some good weeks this season so far, but he's also had some really bad ones. So I'm not, holding out hope too much for a win there, but you never know. But yeah, I think you pointed out quite well that Soundbite against Cephalin, I think, is the most important match here this week. Cephalin had a pretty lucky start, but in terms of total score, he's still actually ahead of Soundbite. But Soundbite had, two pretty good weeks back to back now, and maybe if he can keep that going, even if Cephalin's ahead in total score, they're very close. So definitely an interesting one to look at there. And other than that, you do mostly have, even though top and bottom is not far apart in this division, you do mostly have top against bottom matchups. So it could be we could create a bit of a gap this week, or we could just have everything go even closer together.
Yeah, definitely be interesting. And on the other side of Division 5, Division 5B, really an amazing set of scores. Nobody dropping more than 100 points. Geoguessr against that red card matchup, the only one who comes away with the win. So it was really bonus points, the name of the game this week, Orpheus.
Yeah, the perfect scores of Sheldon and Jack are very important, and also the bonus points for them and Danny Blonde, because they are in the top of the rankings. So it's important for them to continue their good starts in the season. So, but on the other side, Paranoid Android and No didn't get any bonus points. So we will see if it will be prejudicial to them.
Yeah, Calamity. Quite a few people. It looks like maybe the cutoff was 24.99 something. You had to be at least above that to get a bonus point. I see 9.5 were the two, and then anybody below that didn't pick up anything.
Actually, I think I made a mistake there now that I look at it. Let me explain. The way I like how no one's complained about it so far. Apparently, they're fine with getting 1 point. But the way the sheet works essentially is it gives out bonus points based on if you're above the median of the division. But in this case, we've got two players that are at the exact median of the division, with Neusel and Arnono on the same amount of points. So one of them does get an additional bonus point. Let me just quickly look up who of those two it is.
Yeah, based on time.
Exactly. And it will be Neusel who does pick up a bonus point there. Usually, like, if it's like in the Volvo dealership map, I of course check if, like, obviously more than half of the players are above the 25k mark. But because I think, was it one of these players who had an extension? I don't quite remember, but apparently must have just missed that. And I will, of course, correct that to make sure that Neusel does get his deserved bonus point for that. But yeah, apart from that, must have been a very, very easy seed in general. If you look at the seed and just ignore like who's in which division, 40 players who played that seed managed to score above 24.9k. So that just shows, maybe not the most difficult seed, but all of these players still managed to get above that score as well. So it's a great job from them. And yeah, it does still have quite a bit of disparity between, the players who scored just a few points more, who were a bit more comfortable and managed to pinpoint locations as well. But overall, I don't think anything too surprising happened. Jack's just keeping his pretty good form going as well, which is important to see.
Yeah, very nice to see him doing well on this one. So we'll take a look at the Division 5B table. As Calamity noted, Neusel should have 1 extra point, so that will bump him up into 6th. But other than that, not a whole lot of movement again in Division 5, despite those results. Jack moved into the top 3 against our No, but Sheldon, Danny Blonde's keeping their spots. This table, though, pretty close as well. I think even down into like Neusel and Durkme could definitely make a run for staying safe, if not even maybe a late push into the promotion spots here, Orpheus.
Yeah, it's logical to me to see Sheldon, Danny Blondes, and Jack at the top. There is already a small gap between Sheldon and Danny Blondes, so maybe Sheldon will win this group. He has a very good season so far, and we can see that Arnaud Nono has also a very good total score. So maybe he will be able to fight for the promotion playoffs. And the same for Biquet. There is only 2 points between Jack and the two Frenchmen, so they can take advantage of mistakes by Jake or Danny Blonde. So maybe they can move up in the rankings. And at the bottom, it's hard to tell. There is one less spot for direct relegation, but it will depend a lot on how the different players can be consistent in the next weeks.
Yeah, Calamity. I definitely think that we've got some long-time players, Geoguessr, Noisel, Paranoid Android, all kind of struggling there in that bottom half of the table, and some of the new boys doing quite well at the top.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I do think like it's very interesting to look at Noisel in particular because you always, you've got to remember he's got 1 point more, so he's actually in 6th. And looking at his total score and his aces, he's had a very interesting season so far. He shouldn't really be there according to those, but apparently had some kind of lucky matchups so far. I suppose he also, he already had his 3 points against the red carded player. So currently in a decent position, but it'll depend on if he can maybe improve a bit upon that in his own personal performances to manage to stay up there, especially if you look at, Geoguessr and Dukmir behind him on pretty much 16,000 points more in terms of total score and had by far a better season, just not the lucky matchups so far. But yeah, at the top, I think Sheldon's in a pretty good place. And he's also already got 3 points of a lead. Of course, still 4 weeks to go. A lot can happen, but that is a pretty good position to start with, especially if you compare his total score to the people directly behind him, because that is the first tiebreaker. So even if Danny Blondes, for example, would make up 3 points, unless Sheldon drops a massive amount of points in one of the maps, and he's probably still in a better place, and the people behind him would need to make up 1 more point than just to go even with him.
Well, let's take a look at their matchups in Russia. And what would have been the Bosnia-Herzegovina derby is kind of spoiled by the red card. So Dikmir will be really happy, though, to not have to worry about Russia too much. Other than that, it is really much kind of a top versus bottom matchup here. Probably the closest matchup is Arnaud and Danny Blondes, though, Orpheus.
Yeah, it's the same as before. In theory, Sheldon, Jack, and Biquet should easily win with respect to the current rankings, but it's Russia, so it will always depend on how they do well in this country. And yes, the match between Danny Blondes and Arnaud Nono is so very important.
Oh yeah, Calamity.
Yeah, definitely. As Orpheus said, Arnaud Nono against Danny Blondes, a very important game. But I also think, essentially in this division, from what we've seen so far, the skill levels are pretty close in most of these matches, with potentially the exception, of course, between Noisel and Jack. And particularly last week, I think said Noisel doesn't practice too much, so maybe he's not in for more points this week. And, Paranoid Android finally needs to get some more points on the table if he wants to stay in this division. And it won't be easy against Biquet, but, in Russia, kind of like, if you practice enough, I think everyone's got a chance, even if you are up against someone who, just purely looking at past results, looks like he should be the better player. Yeah, and of course, Dikmir will probably be happy about that free game here.
Yeah, well, before we get to the map of Russia, we do have the Reddit League next to take a look at. And yeah, Calamity, with this week, you've added some color schemes to the scores. Do you want to talk about that a bit?
I just thought it would look nice. Just add a little bit of color into it. And I added a bunch of borders as well to just make it look a bit cleaner. And I thought because we're looking essentially at a summation of points, might as well color, the good coloring the good performances to really show, because otherwise you're just looking at a bunch of numbers and at first glance you can't really see what happened. So this makes that stand out a bit more and shows where people really had good performances that brought them up and where people had bad performances that held them back. Like you can clearly see here how Hori in the first week had a horrible performance, essentially 4,000 points in Poland, but he's come back with some good performances and made it back to the top of the table. And Strassel in second, still benefiting a bit from that Poland game, but has been on a bit of a downward trend. Not really anything impressive or too impressive in the following weeks. And that just, shows that a bit better.
Oh, very nice. Well, moving on to Russia, despite all the crazy political machinations going on in Russia, it is always an amazing map to separate players. It is not easy. You can be in some beautiful cities or in the middle of nowhere in the frozen north, or even near the nice beaches in the south, near the Caspian Sea. So really a wide variety of countries. And just like Australia, it's so big that you can be on the wrong end of it and get almost no points at all. It is not generous in that regard. But yeah, any thoughts on Russia as a map, Orpheus?
Yeah, well, it's it's an interesting country for sure. I think it's one of the hardest countries in Geoguessr, and it will depend a lot on the abilities of the players to read the Cyrillic, for example, or to know the main cities. So training is very important in this country. It's also an interesting country in terms of diversity of rounds. So you can first have rural rounds with nothing but small towns, and the only thing that will help you is the landscapes. And at first, it can be hard to distinguish the Russian landscapes, but some of them are very distinctive, like, for example, near Mongolia, or in the Caucasus, or of course in the islands of Sakhalin and Kamchatka. You can then have rural rounds with signs for cities like 500 kilometers away that you will have to find, and then other closer cities to finally pinpoint the good intersection. And finally, you have urban rounds, which are definitively not easy. It's sometimes hard when you have signs to know if you have to take time to translate them or not, at the risk of losing time if they are useless. But with a bit of experience, you will know what you have to read to find a city, for example. But the main hint you want to find is the phone area code. I think they are crucial to help you. Each oblast, or I don't know the exact term, but yes, they have their own code. So if you know them and you find a phone code, it will be way easier for you to know where you are. So even if you don't learn them all, there's a certain logic. So it's really worth learning them at least a bit. So yes, I think the main thing obviously is to train like a lot.
Yeah, Calamity.
Yeah, I think Orpheus mentioned most of the important things already, where you kind of want to learn the phone codes because they just, as he said, it can be difficult to know what exactly to look for in cities. Whereas if you've got a phone code, I mean, you know what a phone number looks like, so you know what to read and what not to read there. And it also, I do feel like they appear a bit more often than mentions of the city names in some cities. I mean, it's about even, I'd say, but the phone number already gives you the advantage of knowing where to look for the city name if you do find it. And if you don't, then at least you're sort of in the right area. As he said as well, like landscapes can be pretty different, but also, it's more like you've got different types of areas, and there is still a lot of areas that look very similar. Like if you go into the middle of nowhere, anywhere from like, I don't know, around Moscow to maybe around like the more central parts of the country, it could still very much look the same.
Yep.
But yeah, just as you said, Caucasus and the part close to Mongolia, although they do actually look very similar to each other, they look very different from anything else in Russia. So essentially, if you can just, find anything to, tell those two apart from each other, then you're going to be in a pretty good position there. Yeah, and then the only thing you're kind of hoping for is that you don't get around in the absolute middle of nowhere in a small town, which there are plenty of, because funnily enough, usually you'd think an intersection guesser map makes the map easier, but I actually think in Russia, in this case specifically, it doesn't, because what it essentially does is it takes out all the major highway locations, because there's not really many intersections there, and those are usually the locations where you'll find those highway signs that are like 400 kilometers that way to this big city and 200 that way, which make it fairly easy, but we don't really have too many of those here. So instead of those, basically we have a lot of very small towns in the middle of nowhere, which can be super difficult to find anything really, and then you are just relying on being able to tell apart the landscape.
Yeah, definitely. And just because it is an intersection doesn't mean it's a labeled intersection or even intersection of any significance. It could just be two dirt roads that meet in a small town and you're like, oh, well, I would rather not be here. I could be anywhere else and be much happy. But yeah, an average score of about 15,000 definitely feels like kind of what happens in Russia. We could definitely see a lot of scores around 20,000 or below, more than we would see on any other map, depending on how rural these locations are. But it is Russia, you never know. And like our Orpheus and Calamity have mentioned, practice really going to show off in this one. Well, thank you all for watching. It's great to have you with us as always. Look forward to these matchups coming at you in the cast videos. We hope to bring you quite a few. Hopefully they won't be too boring, just clicking down a dirt road in the middle of nowhere. We might get some good, interesting rounds in Russia despite that. Yeah, and we will see you all next time. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.